You know, deep in the Himalayas, there's a kingdom famous for its tranquility, a place that measures its success not in GDP, but in gross national happiness. We're talking about Bhutan. But right now, this tiny, peaceful nation is stuck right in the middle of a massive geopolitical chess match between two nuclear-armed neighbors, China and India. And the story of why? Well, it's a wild one, about quiet land grabs, strategic weak spots, and a choice that seems almost impossible to make.
Okay, so let's just dive right into the evidence, because you have to see this to believe it. Look at these satellite images. The top one is from November 2020. You can see it's just a remote forested valley. Now look at the bottom one, from just a few years later. An entire modern village has literally appeared out of nowhere. But here's the absolute kicker. This isn't in China. This is a brand new, fully serviced Chinese village built deep inside Bhutan's territory.
So, the question is obvious, right? Why on earth is China building entire towns inside another sovereign country? This isn't just some minor disagreement over where a border fence should go. This is a massive, calculated construction project. And to really get what's going on, we need to pull back the curtain on a strategy that's been playing out for decades.
So let's start at the beginning. This whole standoff didn't just pop up overnight. Nah, its roots go way back. All the way to the moment China annexed Tibet, and suddenly, Bhutan had a brand new and incredibly powerful neighbor on its doorstep.
As you can see from this timeline, for a while it looked like they were trying to manage things. Talks started up in the 80s, and then in 1998, they signed this really important treaty promising to keep the peace and, crucially, not to change the status quo on the border. But that peace? It turned out to be incredibly fragile. The whole thing blew up in 2017 with the Doklam standoff, a really tense showdown between Indian and Chinese soldiers that showed the world just how high the stakes had become.
Now here's where it gets really interesting. China's main goal isn't even the land up north where they're building all these villages. All that construction, all that territory, it's just a bargaining chip. It's leverage to get something they want a whole lot more.
Let's rewind to that package deal they offered back in '96. On paper, it sounds pretty generous. China said, hey, we'll give up our claim on this big chunk of land in the north, but in exchange, they wanted Bhutan to give them a much smaller piece of land in the west. And that smaller piece of land just so happened to include the real prize, the Doklam Plateau.
And that really is the central mystery here, isn't it? Why is China so obsessed with this one small plateau that they're willing to trade more land just to get their hands on it? The answer to that question reveals a massive geopolitical strategy, one that has very little to do with Bhutan itself.
It turns out there's a name for this kind of tactic. It's often called salami slicing. The idea is, instead of a big invasion, you just take a little slice. You build a road, then maybe an outpost, then a few huts for herders. Each individual action is so small that it doesn't seem worth starting a war over. But over time, all those little slices add up, and suddenly you've changed the map without firing a shot.
And if you want to see that strategy in action, just look at this number, 22. That's how many distinct villages and settlements China has now built on land that Bhutan has always considered its own. Each one is another slice, another fact created on the ground.
And all of this, the villages, the pressure, the land swap deal, it's all pointed at one single goal: gaining control of the Doklam Plateau so China can threaten one of India's biggest strategic weaknesses.
This map says it all. You see, from the high ground of the Doklam Plateau, you have a perfect, commanding view of the Siliguri Corridor, this tiny, narrow strip of land that's nervously known as India's chicken's neck.
And it's called that for a very good reason. This little corridor is the only land route connecting mainland India to its 8 northeastern states. We're talking about the lifeline for nearly 45 million people. All their supplies, their commerce, any military backup, it all has to pass through this one choke point. The journalist Humphrey Hawksley wasn't exaggerating when he called it India's Achilles heel.
And get this, at its narrowest point, the chicken's neck is only 22 kilometers wide. That's less than the length of a marathon. In a conflict, it would be dangerously, almost terrifyingly easy to cut off.
So, let's just connect the dots. This whole campaign was never really about Bhutan. By putting all this pressure on Bhutan to give up the Doklam Plateau, China is making a play to get a strategic high ground from which it could, in theory, sever India from its entire northeastern region. It's a move that would totally upend the balance of power.
So all of this leaves Bhutan, this peaceful country with fewer than 1 million people, in an unbelievably tough spot. They are literally caught between two giants.
On one side, you have China's nonstop pressure campaign. They're shredding that 1998 peace treaty, building these villages and military outposts on Bhutanese land, even using Tibetan herders to create a presence there. They're doing whatever it takes to force Bhutan into a corner and make them accept this deal.
And this quote from a Bhutanese analyst just hits the nail on the head. They said that if Bhutan were to abandon India for China, it would be suicidal. It perfectly captures the dilemma. They simply cannot risk angering their oldest and most important ally.
And on the other side, you have that very ally, India. Their partnership is incredibly deep, built on decades of shared culture, economic ties, and, critically, security cooperation. India trains Bhutan's military, provides weapons, even its air defense. There's a formal treaty of friendship that guarantees they'll work together on issues of national interest.
And that support is very, very real. 10,000 crore rupees. That's over $1 billion US. It's the amount of development aid India poured into Bhutan's most recent 5-year plan. That's not just a donation. It's a massive statement about the strength of their partnership.
So when you put it all together, you realize what's happening. Bhutan isn't just trying to stop a neighbor from slowly creeping over the border. It's trying to survive a struggle where its own sovereign land has become a playing piece, a point of leverage in a much bigger game between two regional superpowers.
And that leaves us with one final, lingering question. For a small kingdom that values its peace and independence above all else, how do you possibly navigate your own future when you're caught in the gravitational pull of two of the world's most powerful nations? The answer could shape the future of the entire Himalayan region.